Oh, hello there. I'm Bilchan.
I'm Nimikung.
I'm Banchan.
In this class, I'll read to all of you. Chapter 5, Section 2 of Jane Eyre, an Autobiography.
As.
Jane Eyre, an Autobiography. Brontë. Chapter 5, Section 2. And the meal began. Ravenous. And now very faint. Or two of my portion without thinking of its taste. Of hunger blunted. I perceived I have got in hand and this mess. Burnt porridge is almost as bad as rotten potatoes. The spoons were moved slowly, and tried to swallow it. But in most cases the effort was soon relinquished. Breakfast was over, and now breakfast. We had not got it, and a second enchanted. For the schoolroom. I was one of the last to go out. In passing the tables and taste it, she looked at the others, while their countenances expressed displeasure, and one of them, the stout one, was but abominable stuff. Quarter of an hour passed before lessons again began. In a glorious tumult. She talked loud and more freely, and they used their privilege. Conversation ran on the breakfasts, which one and all abused roundly. Poor things. It was the sole consolation they had. Chicha in the room. Serious and sullen gestures. I heard the name of Mr. Some lips, at which Miss Miller shook her head disapprovingly. No great effort to check the general wrath. Doubtless she shared in it. Clock in the schoolroom struck 9. Miss Miller left her circle. In the middle of the room. Quiet. Silence. Discipline prevailed. Minister, the confused throng was resolved into order. Clamour of tongues. The upper teachers now punctually resumed their posts. But still, all seemed to wait. Perched on benches down the sides of the room. The 80 girls sat motionless and erect. A quaint assemblage they appeared, all with plain locks combed from their faces. Not a cull visible. Brown dresses, made high and surrounded by a narrow garb at the throat. Their frocks, and destined to serve the purpose of a work bag. 1, 2, wearing woolen stockings and country-made shoes, fastened with brass buckles. 20 of those clad in this costume were full-grown girls, or rather young women. It suited them well. Prettiest. I was still looking at them, of whom precisely pleased me, for the stout one was a little coarse, the dark one not a little fierce, the fern harsh and grotesque. Miss Miller, poor thing, looked purple. Weather beatened. I'm overworked how hen. While I wandered from face to face. The whole school rose simultaneously, if moved by a common spring. What was the matter? Order going. I was puzzled, ere I had gathered my wits. Classes were again seated, but his all eyes were now turned to one point. Mine followed the general direction. Last night, she stood at the bottom of the long room. Half, for there was a fire at each end. Rows of goals silently and gravely. Miss Miller approaching. A question. And having received her answer, went back to her place and said aloud, "Monitor of the first class," while the direction was being executed. The lady consulted moved slowly up the room. Considerable organ of veneration, which my eyes traced her steps. Seen now, in broad daylight, Oaktoll, Fair, and Shipley. There is, and a fine penciling of long lashes round, of her large front. On each of her temples her hair, very dark brown, was clustered in round coals. Those times, when neither smooth bends nor long ringlets were in vogue. Dress, also in the mode of the day, was of purple cloth, relieved by a sort of Spanish trimming of black velvet, were not so common than is now shown at her girdle. Added, to complete the picture, refined features, a complexion, if pale, clear, and a stately air and carriage. And you will have, at least, as clearly as words can give it, the exterior of Miss Temple Maria Temple, per book entrusted to me to carry to church. Of the tables, some in the first class round her. Lesson on geography. The lower classes were called by the teachers history, drama, and C. Went on for an hour. Succeeded. Thus, the duration of each lesson was measured by the clock. Last struck 12. The superintendent rose. People, said she. The tumult of cessation from lessons was already breaking forth. It sank at her voice. She went on, which she could not eat. To prize. It is to be done on my responsibility, she added. Turned to them, and immediately afterwards left the room. Presently brought in and distributed full straw bonnet with strings of clear calico and a cloak of grey frieze. I was similarly equipped, and following the stream way into the open air. The garden was a wide enclosure, so high as to exclude every glimpse of prospect. One side, beds. These beds were assigned as gardens for the pupils to cultivate. Each bed had an owner. One full of flowers, they would doubtless look pretty. But now, at the latter end of January, and brown decay, I shuddered as I stood and looked round me. Was an inclement day for outdoor exercise. Not positively rainy. A drizzling yellow fog of yesterday. The stronger among the Gauls ran about, engaged in active games. Veranda. And amongst these, as the dense mist penetrated to their shivering frames, I heard frequently the sound of a hollow cough. To no one, nor did anybody seem to take notice of me. Stood lonely enough. But to that feeling of isolation I was accustomed. Did not oppress me much. I leant against a pillar of the veranda, drew my grey mantle close about me, and which nipped me without, and the unsatisfied hunger which gnawed me within, myself up to the employment of watching and thinking, and fragmentary to merit record. I hardly yet knew where I was, and my past life soon floated away to an immeasurable distance, vague and strange, and of the future I could form no conjecture, though round the common like garden, and then up at the house the large building, half of which seemed grey and old, the other half quite new pot, containing the schoolroom and dormitory, windows, which gave it a church-like aspect, bore this inscription: Aloud Institution. This portion was rebuilt at D. Brocklehurst of Brocklehurst Hall in this county. Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works in heaven. Dent. Mat. They. 16. Iron. I felt that an explanation belonged to them. To penetrate their import. To make out a connection between the first words and the verse of scripture. When the sound of a close behind me made me turn my head, I saw a girl sitting on a stone bench near a book, on the perusal of which she seemed intent. Stood I could see that her lip was restless, and in that struck me as strange, and consequently attractive. In turning a leaf she happened to look up, and I said to her directly, intention of asking her to lend it to me some day, and said, after a pause of a second or two, then, what is it about? I continued. Hardly had thus to open a conversation with a stranger. My nature and habits. Somewhere, for I too like reading, though of a frivolous and childish kind. I could not digest or comprehend the serious or substantial. It, replied the girl, offering me the book. I did so. Examination convinced me that the contents were less taking than the title, though to my trifling taste. I saw nothing about fairies, nothing about Ginny. No bright variety seemed spread over the closely printed pages. Huh? She receded quietly, relapsed into her former studious mood. Again I ventured to disturb her. Tell me what the writing on that stone over the door means. Do they call it institution? It is partly a charity school. You and I, and all the rest of us, are charity children. An orphan. Well, pants. Do we pay no money? We pay. Or our friends pay. Because £15 is not enough for board and teaching. Both the new part of this house has that tablet records. Does not belong to that tall lady who wears a watch. To Miss Temple? Well, I wish it did. Waste it. Broccoli has for all she does. Waste it. Not 4 miles off. Is a Jimin. The one with red cheeks is called Miss Smith. Attends to the worked and cuts out for we make our own clothes. Proct and pelisses and everything. Miss Kachud. She teaches history in grammar. And here's the second class repetitions. And the one who wears a shawl. Her side with a yellow ribbon is Madame Pert. She comes from Lille, in France. Do you like the little black one? Hasty, I must take care not to offend her. Very clever. She is above the rest. You ask rather too many questions. I have given you answers enough for the present. The summons sounded for dinner. All re-entered the house. Breakfast. The dinner was served in 2 huge templated vessels. Strong steam redolent of rancid fat. Potatoes and strange shreds of rusty meat. Mixed and cooked together. Preparation, a tolerably abundant plateful was apportioned to each people. But I wondered with myself whether every day's fare would be like this. Dinner. We immediately adjourned to the schoolroom. Lessons recommenced. Till 5 o'clock. The only marked event of the afternoon was scattered from a history class. Large schoolroom. The punishment seemed to me in a high degree ignominious. For so great a Josh with 13 or upwards. Signs of great distress and shame. Blushed. Composed. Their grave. She stood. How can she bear it so quickly, so firmly? I asked of myself. Were I in her place? To open and swallow me up. Something beyond her punishment, beyond her situation. Of something not round her nor before her. I have heard of daydreams. Is she in a daydream now? Fixed on the floor. Turned in. Born down into her heart. She can remember. I believe. Not at what is really present. After 5 p.m. we had another meal. Toffee. And half a slice of brown bread. Coffee with relish. Still hungry. Half an hour's recreation succeeded. Then study. And the piece of oat cake. Prayers. And bed. To be continued.